I was going to introduce my guest as a legend, but I better ask Sylvia Sidney if she feels like a legend in show business. I don't know what that really means.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I was thinking now, you were born in 1910,
Right.
so you've been around show business for what, at least 50 years? Right?
More, 55.
So
50
that's a
something.
long, I would say you qualify as a living legend, perhaps.
It doesn't make me feel any better.
You're right, it's how we feel right now that counts. I don't know where to begin, whether to talk about movies first with you or Broadway. We were talking about Broadway in the 20s and 30s, which was quite different. But I read in the biography that somebody sent me about you that you got tired of playing a certain kind of role and went back to Broadway and essentially stayed there for the remainder of your career up until now.
Well,
is that
it's been
true?
back and forth.
Yeah.
When I'm in Hollywood, quote unquote, because it really doesn't exist that way anymore, I'm called the stage actress.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the theater, I'm called that movie actress.
Now that's interesting, isn't it? There does seem to be a, I don't want to use the word stigma, but people think less of Hollywood.
Well, if
actors
you
and
don't want to
actresses.
use the word stigma, what word do you want to use?
Okay, well, let's use it. There is a stigma from New York about people who only appear before cameras, and they don't seem to feel legitimate until they come to New York and do something before a live audience. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
No, no, not at all, because there's a tremendous value in certain techniques as a film, like Greta Garbo, Elizabeth Taylor. They're monumentally good actresses on film, and it doesn't matter whether or not they are good actresses on the stage.
Well,
I don't have that snobbishness.
Yeah.
I happen to have started in the theater when I was about 15, and theater is more like home to me than film. I've never felt really like a film actress.
So you don't feel that that the true art of thespianism occurs only on the stage, that films has introduced a new
It's
form.
a different ball game.
Yeah. Well, you certainly reach more people through films, don't
Oh,
you?
obviously, of course.
Which one?
And it's very helpful if you are good at it in the theater to have had a good film career, because the name has more visibility. The face has more visibility.
You were a star in Hollywood in its heyday. That we
Now,
all,
don't say that.
Well, you were. Don't
When
you think
I
you
went
were?
to Hollywood, I think it was 1930, 31,
Yeah.
everybody said, well, of course, you've missed the golden era
that right,
of Hollywood.
really?
Right, because all these tacky Broadway actresses and actresses were coming to Hollywood because of talking pictures.
Yeah.
And they felt that we had no glamour at all.
Well, it certainly isn't in its heyday today. You'd agree to that, wouldn't you? Hollywood.
I don't know what heyday is. If
Oh.
you mean volume of production, no, it is not.
Right.
But then the only thing that, even that's running down, the volume of production of cars.
Well, let me define what I think heyday is, and that is not only mass production of film, several hundred a year, but a lot of quality films coming out, making a lot of statements about life today. I think one could say there's less and better films today, but I don't even think they're better.
Some aren't.
Most are.
Some
I
are.
think, yeah.
Some are more interesting. I don't think the quality of photography is as fine as the controlled quality was.
As an actress, what have you thought for these 50 years your job is? To do what?
To be as good an actress as I can possibly be, and to perform a part to the best of my ability, and to interpret it the best I know how, as far as the director is concerned.
Let's take it another step. Do you feel any responsibility to the audience to move them or touch them or change them?
If you don't move them or touch them, you are not a performer. What happened? You closed up on me.
No, I was just thinking about that because a lot of people say that's not important, that they're
Oh, it's
simply there
very important. What
to
do people come to
entertain.
the theater for?
Well, I hear people say, oh, just to make people laugh and entertain them, and I don't care
Oh,
if they walk
laughing
out
is
and think-
touching them and moving them.
Well, okay,
That's a very important part of it.
yeah. But sometimes people think laughter is not as important as drama, seriousness.
Oh, no way, no way. Anybody that's a good comedian is, has more ability than somebody that can just make anybody cry.
When you were a little girl, did you always want to be an actress?
No.
No? What did you want to be?
I just wanted to be left alone.
Well, I think we all
keep
felt
out
that.
of trouble.
Why, were you a bad girl when you were a little kid?
I don't know. My
Mischievous?
mother always caught me doing something I wasn't supposed to do.
You do have a mischievous face. I was thinking about that as I saw your pictures in the past, and now today you look very mischievous today. Are you still?
I can afford to be now.
Why do you say that, afford to be now? You mentioned a while ago that you don't take critics very seriously now.
Don't take anything seriously.
Really?
Really.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, dear, the time is getting shorter and shorter. And whatever is left, I want to enjoy. And I don't want to be bothered. And I don't want to be bothered with junk or stupidity.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice place
And I want
to
to have a good time
Is it easy?
before I finish.
Is it easier to have a good time now, Sylvia, than it was 20 years ago?
Yes, because I don't take myself so seriously.
I think we all look forward to that, but somehow you make aging sound beautiful, and I think most people seem to be afraid of growing old. Why is that?
Vanity.
Yeah, that's one of the vices.
People worry about how they look. I was looking, oh my God. I don't know where that picture was that you had of me when I was about 18.
Yes.
And everybody used to talk about a teeny nose and all that sort of thing. I looked there,
There
and
you are.
here's
Now,
this
you're about 18 there.
strange nose, but that's the power of gravity. I have no control over it. It dropped. Everything drops as you get older.
Well, no, I don't think your nose has dropped very much.
Oh, a lot of difference between that nose and the nose I just looked at.
And you told me a while ago in the dressing room you haven't had any nips or tucks or
No.
anything, no facelifts,
No.
eye jobs, nothing. Well, now that's unusual because I think most people in the bit, well, we shouldn't say most people, but an awful lot of people who are before the camera and on stage have, and we agreed there was nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think there's something wrong. If somebody needs it to feel better, great.
Yeah.
But if my face looked 40 and my eyes looked 70, it would look awful funny. Because there's something about the expression of the eye
Yeah.
that you cannot do any plastic surgery to.
Right. Well,
And
you're
I
just,
know I got 70-year-old eyes.
well, you're just a very secure person then.
It isn't secure so much as accepting.
Yeah. I wonder if it's easier for women to do that than men.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Women are brainwashed that they must be attractive, they must be groomed. Well, I don't call this a grooming job.
No, but you're absolutely right. The whole feminist movement is about that whole observation that,
Well, by the same token, I do think bras have a place.
yeah.
That jiggle movement is not too attractive.
Well, now that depends on who you talk to.
And who's jiggling?
Yes. And how much jiggle and what kind. No, but I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. But I hate to say that because I'm a man, and I give such a male, distorted view of life, and it's true. Women have been compartmentalized by men most of our time this century, certainly, and I think it's been a shame. I think it's hurt women and not allowed them to be as expressive and creative as they might have been.
Well, because my exposure has been so different. I've never been in competition with a man for a job.
No.
I mean, nobody ever said to me, we can always get Jimmy Cagney for that part.
Well, now, you're right. There's a woman directing Mornings at 7 now, right?
No,
A woman directed on Broadway?
no. That's man, his name is Vivian Matalon.
Oh, an Englishman.
He's an Englishman.
Well, have you ever had a female director in your career?
Yes.
She as good as the men?
The first one was a woman by the name of Dorothy Osner, who was probably one of the most brilliant film directors. And at that time, she was the only female film director. And she directed many, many big stars and many, many important films for Paramount. The second time I worked with a woman director was quite recently. Joanne Woodward directed me.
In Shadowbox.
No.
Well, the
Paul
Paul
Newman
Newman
directed that.
Well, that's right.
But since then, Joanne and I have done a little short thing for public television with Estelle Parsons. And she's gotten her feet wet again.
Is that what
directed.
you were nominated for an Oscar for? What role was that you...
Oh, no, that was with Joanne in a picture, I don't know, made about 6, 7 years ago called Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams.
Right. You played her mother?
Right.
How was the disappointment when you didn't... the reason I'm asking you is because in the biography that your office sent, or your public relations, said that your colleagues were very distressed that some little girl got the Oscar that year, and they all thought you should...
Some little girl by the name of Tatum O'Neill.
Yeah, oh, okay, well, I remember reading that. Well, we all sit out in the audience and watch everybody at the Academy Awards night waiting, and the camera shows everybody waiting, and then we hear later that people don't really care. And I always rather imagine we all do care and want to win.
Oh, I guess you care a little bit, but I knew it was in the bag.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, that must have hurt to know ahead of time.
Oh, come on. What difference does it make?
Well, that's right. We forgot. You don't care about this. Mornings at 7. Now, we were talking about the critics, and they were talking about the play that's appearing, and some were saying and making these critiques, and you said, I don't think they saw the play or they understood what's going on.
No, I didn't say that. I said they don't listen to the play. They take a very superficial thing and pick on a minor point, which means they haven't listened to the major point.
Mm-hmm.
And they come with their own bias and their own prejudice, and there's no way of controlling that.
But that must be very frustrating and upsetting to have people critiquing publicly in a widespread fashion what you do for a living and really don't pay attention to what they're talking about.
Well,
That must really
it's
bug you.
slightly frustrating, but it's a system, and what can you do about it?
I guess.
If you go on strike and say, I won't be there opening night if you have a critic out front.
Well, what do you think of critics in general? Not personally, but the idea of a critic going to a Broadway show the first night.
Well, I think they
Killing
have
it.
been given too much power. I think the average public is brainwashed, and they say, oh, so-and-so said this about that, we won't go to see it. Or so-and-so said this about it, we got to get tickets. And they'll pay anything to see the show and hate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know how we can take that power away from them. Any suggestions on what we might do?
Well, the only way you could do it would be to not advertise.
Sure.
No more theater
Couldn't
advertising.
do that. I hear you're a big needlepoint person.
Well, I'm not big.
You've written 2 books.
I've written 2 books about needlepoint, on needlepoint.
How did you get interested in doing something like that, to that extent?
Oh, I don't know. Things just happen with me, and everything is rather accidental. When I had a farm down in Jersey, when I was married to Luther Adler, I was very specific about keeping everything in the period of the house, and everything had to be absolutely perfect, even to having a cabinet maker in the house to repair certain floors and make the handmade pegs and all that. And I did a lot of work at the Metropolitan Museum in the American Wing, and studied hook rugging and all that, and design of the period. And then I got rather bored with that. And when Luther and I were divorced, and I gave up the farm, I decided that I wanted to have a freer hand with needlepoint. And I guess there's a frustrated artist in me somewhere.
Probably.
And then I got discovered in New York, and it became the thing. If you were really in, you had to have a Sylvia Sidney needlepoint piece. The Duchess of Windsor used to buy
really?
them, and you know. And I don't know, somebody called me one day and said, why don't you do a book on needlepoint? I said, I can't even write a letter.
I was thinking of books, why you haven't done a book about your career, your life.
Well, dear, you know, we spend an awful lot of time forgetting.
Yeah.
And I don't want to remember all the things I've forgotten. Because if I've forgotten them, it means I don't want to remember them.
Now, that's a very profound statement. You said that in half in jest, but there's a lot of... you said a mouthful, as they say. There are a lot of things we do forget, and maybe we don't want to remember some of them, because there must be a lot of painful memories.
Well, there are a lot of painful memories, and why do it all over again?
Well, it strikes me in your case, having only met you, and will probably never see you again, what a fascinating person you are. You're thoughtful, you're introspective, you're serious about life and yourself, and yet you don't take it all too seriously. So it occurs to me that a person like you has more business writing a book than most people who write books, and yet it seems you won't, and I'm sorry for that.
Well, the other night when I was in the dressing room just before the opening, after we'd had a dress rehearsal run-through, and I was trying like the devil to just have a short snooze, and I was very uptight. And I started to make a list in my mind. I thought that would put me to sleep of all the foolish things I've done. That was a hell of a list to keep me awake.
Tell me a couple. I'd be interested to hear what you think were foolish.
Well,
things.
I liked. They started with some things at school, and later on films, and then I liked the kind of fancy of the foolish. One list was the foolish things I've done. Married Bennett Cerf.
That was foolish?
That was foolish. Divorced Bennett Cerf. That was foolish. Married Luther Adler. That was foolish. Divorced Luther Adler. That was foolish. Married Carlton Alsop. Divorcing him was not foolish.
No. So you were, how old were you when you divorced your last husband? In other words, how long have you been single?
Oh my gosh.
Long
time.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't go for number 4.
Oh no, if you make 3 mistakes, come on, you've got to be pretty silly
Well, maybe
to try
the 4th
again.
one would have been.
No, the record was that Bennett remarried and stayed married. Luther remarried and stayed married. Carlton remarried and stayed married. So it must have been my fault.
I see, okay. Now, what year did you go to Hollywood the first time?
I don't remember. 30 or 31, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Was it as wild out there as we hear these days it was? Sexually promiscuous and crazy
Hey, when you're
antics
making 4 or
and-
5 pictures a year, which was the routine then,
Yeah.
I don't know that you have much time for wildness.
Well, I think Errol Flynn had enough time.
No, but that was later.
Okay. In the 30s, though, and I guess the style was, well, but you know what I'm talking about. You've read the books about Hollywood in its golden period, as they say, from 30 to 40. And then
I haven't
more
read them
years.
all.
Well, I still think you should write one.
Well,
What else?
maybe for you I'll try.
What other foolish things have you done in your life?
I can't remember the list now. Those are the 3 things I remember.
But now you don't really seriously, let's be serious now for a moment. Do you really regret those marriages?
Not at all.
Okay, so
Not
you
at
really
all,
don't.
no.
They taught you something about yourself, perhaps, that you wouldn't have found out any other way.
Exactly.
So it was worth discovering and finding. Well, we're going to look forward to mornings at 7 here, and I appreciate you taking the time to come here and visit with us.
Thank you. I hope you like it.
Well, I do. I'm sure I will, just to watch you and Dana Andrews, and I'll be thinking of the book I'll expect you to write someday. Sylvia
I
Sidney.
don't sit still long enough to write. That's the problem.
Well, you better sit still. Thanks very much. We'll be right back.